It was 9 o'clock in the morning. The hearing room was big and fancy, with shiny walls and long tables. Important people in suits were sitting in every chair. There were reporters with cameras and notebooks. Everyone looked serious. Pam Bondi sat at the witness table. That means she was there to answer questions. She looked calm and strong, with her hair neat and her shoulders straight. She wasn't nervous. At least, she didn't look nervous. Then came Senator Elizabeth Warren. She spoke loudly, without waiting for anyone to tell her it was her turn. She stood up fast and slammed a thick folder onto the desk. It made a loud noise. Some people even jumped because they were so surprised. The whole room got quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind where everyone is waiting for something big to happen. Elizabeth looked at Pam and said, "Before we hear what you have to say, I want to know why you haven't said anything about the train accident in East Palestine. Kids were hurt. Families were scared. And you said nothing." Pam didn't say a word. She didn't even blink. But something in her eyes changed. Just for a second. Elizabeth didn't stop. She said, "Is it because you care more about your friends in politics than about the people who got sick?" People in the room gasped. That means they took a big breath in because they were shocked. The boss of the room, Chairman Hale, pushed up his glasses but didn't say anything. He wanted to see what would happen. Elizabeth kept going. "You were at a fancy party in Florida that weekend, weren't you?" she asked. She held up a picture of Pam smiling in a pretty dress, holding a glass of wine. Pam still didn't say anything. Elizabeth shouted more. "How many people have you visited in East Palestine? How many mothers have you sat with? Or is that not important to you?" Now the room was even quieter than before. Everyone was listening. No one made a sound. Even the cameras seemed like they were holding their breath. Pam's hands stayed still. But something inside her was getting stronger. Not fear. Not worry. Something deep, like when someone remembers something very important. Elizabeth wasn't done. "You say you care about people, but when they needed you, you disappeared." She hit the table again with her hand. "Where were you, Pam?" People in the room whispered. "Where were you?" It started trending on the internet right away. Still, Pam didn't answer. She looked around the room. Some people looked mad. Some looked confused. In the back, a red light on a camera blinked. That meant it was still live on TV. Elizabeth said one more thing. "If you have nothing to say, maybe you shouldn't even have your job." Chairman Hale finally raised his hand. "Let's let the witness speak." Elizabeth sat back. She looked like she had already won. Like she thought Pam had nothing to say. But Pam wasn't scared. She took a breath and asked, "May I speak?" The chairman nodded. "You may." Pam stood up slowly. Everyone looked at her. Even though she didn't raise her voice, the room changed. It felt like something big was about to happen. She looked right at Elizabeth and said, "Senator Warren asked why I was silent." Then she said something no one expected. "What she doesn't know is what I saw." Everyone stopped writing. A reporter put her pen down. Another one started recording. Pam looked down, like she was remembering something very sad. Then she looked back up. "I wasn't silent because I didn't care," she said. "I was silent because I was grieving. And when I speak, I don't give headlines. I give truth." Elizabeth didn't like that. She leaned forward and said, "Then answer the question. Why did you disappear?" Pam looked at her and said, calmly, "Senator, where were you when mothers in East Palestine were burying their children? While you were drinking wine in a Boston cellar?" The room didn't make a sound. A reporter gasped. One dropped his pen. Even the cameras zoomed in on Elizabeth's face. She looked shocked. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. Pam's words weren't loud, but they were true. And everyone in the room knew it. Senators looked down. Reporters stopped typing. Elizabeth's helpers behind her looked scared. Chairman Hale didn't touch his gavel. He just stared. Pam's memory. What Elizabeth didn't know was that Pam had gone to East Palestine. There was a hospital set up inside a high school gym. It smelled like chemicals. It was loud with the beeping of machines. Pam had come without telling anyone. No cameras. No news people. She drove herself through the night to get there. A nurse nodded to her and pointed to a curtained area. Behind the curtain, a little girl named Emily was lying on a cot. She had a tube in her nose to help her breathe. She looked very sick. Her mom, Lena, sat next to her. She looked tired and scared. Pam didn't ask for a photo. She didn't take out a notebook. She just knelt down beside Lena and put a hand on her shoulder. Lena whispered, "She was fine 2 days ago. Now she can't breathe." Pam stayed there, quiet, listening. Lena looked up and asked, "Do you even know what this feels like?" Pam said, "I don't know what it feels like to be you, but I know what it means to feel powerless." A nurse came in and told Lena something quietly. "They said it's chemicals," Lena said, "but they won't write it down. They're afraid." Pam asked, "Why?" The nurse whispered, "We were told not to blame the train crash. Not on paper." That made Pam angry. Not the kind of anger you shout about. The kind you feel deep inside. The kind that stays. She told the nurse, "If anything happens to Emily, call me." She gave the nurse her personal phone number. Then Pam walked out. The air outside was cold and smelled like rain and chemicals. She stood by her car, hands shaking. Not from fear. From deep, burning anger. 3 days later, she was in a meeting back in Washington. People were talking about how much poison was acceptable. None of them had seen a sick child. None of them had held a crying mom. Pam had. That memory stayed with her. And now, in the hearing room, with Noazabeth yelling, it came back again. How dare Noazabeth talk like that, without even visiting the place, without seeing what Pam had seen. Pam clenched her fingers on the table. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. The hearing room was big and fancy, with shiny walls and long tables. Important people in suits were sitting in every chair. There were reporters with cameras and notebooks. Everyone looked serious. Pam Bondi sat at the witness table. That means she was there to answer questions. She looked calm and strong, with her hair neat and her shoulders straight. She wasn't nervous. At least, she didn't look nervous. Then came Senator Noazabeth Warren. She spoke loudly, without waiting for anyone to tell her it was her turn. She stood up fast and slammed a thick folder onto the desk. It made a loud noise. Some people even jumped because they were so surprised. The whole room got quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind where everyone is waiting for something big to happen. Noazabeth looked at Pam and said, "Before we hear what you have to say, I want to know why you haven't said anything about the train accident in East Palestine. Kids were hurt. Families were scared. And you said nothing." Pam didn't say a word. She didn't even blink. But something in her eyes changed. Just for a second. Noazabeth didn't stop. She said, "Is it because you care more about your friends in politics than about the people who got sick?" People in the room gasped. That means they took a big breath in because they were shocked. The boss of the room, Chairman Hale, pushed up his glasses but didn't say anything. He wanted to see what would happen. Noazabeth kept going. "You were at a fancy party in Florida that weekend, weren't you?" she asked. She held up a picture of Pam smiling in a pretty dress, holding a glass of wine. Pam still didn't say anything. Noazabeth shouted more. "How many people have you visited in East Palestine? How many mothers have you sat with? Or is that not important to you?" Now the room was even quieter than before. Everyone was listening. No one made a sound. Even the cameras seemed like they were holding their breath. Pam's hands stayed still. But something inside her was getting stronger. Not fear. Not worry. Something deep, like when someone remembers something very important. Noazabeth wasn't done. "You say you care about people, but when they needed you, you disappeared." She hit the table again with her hand. "Where were you, Pam?" People in the room whispered. "Where were you?" It started trending on the internet right away. Still, Pam didn't answer. She looked around the room. Some people looked mad. Some looked confused. In the back, a red light on a camera blinked. That meant it was still live on TV. Noazabeth said one more thing. "If you have nothing to say, maybe you shouldn't even have your job." Chairman Hale finally raised his hand. "Let's let the witness speak." Elizabeth sat back. She looked like she had already won. Like she thought Pam had nothing to say. But Pam wasn't scared. She took a breath and asked, "May I speak?" The chairman nodded. "You may." Pam stood up slowly. Everyone looked at her. Even though she didn't raise her voice, the room changed. It felt like something big was about to happen. She looked right at Elizabeth and said, "Senator Warren asked why I was silent." Then she said something no one expected. "What she doesn't know is what I saw." Everyone stopped writing. A reporter put her pen down. Another one started recording. Pam looked down, like she was remembering something very sad. Then she looked back up. "I wasn't silent because I didn't care," she said. "I was silent because I was grieving. And when I speak, I don't give headlines. I will tell the truth." Elizabeth didn't like that. She leaned forward and said, "Then answer the question. Why did you disappear?" Pam looked at her and said, calmly, "Senator, where were you when mothers in East Palestine were burying their children? While you were drinking wine in a Boston cellar?" The room didn't make a sound. A reporter gasped. One dropped his pen. Even the cameras zoomed in on Elizabeth's face. She looked shocked. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. Pam's words weren't loud, but they were true. And everyone in the room knew it. Senators looked down. Reporters stopped typing. Elizabeth's helpers behind her looked scared. Chairman Hale didn't touch his gavel. He just stared. Pam's memory. What Elizabeth didn't know was that Pam had gone to East Palestine. There was a hospital set up inside a high school gym. It smelled like chemicals. It was loud with the beeping of machines. Pam had come without telling anyone. No cameras. No news people. She drove herself through the night to get there. A nurse nodded to her and pointed to a curtained area. Behind the curtain, a little girl named Emily was lying on a cot. She had a tube in her nose to help her breathe. She looked very sick. Her mom, Lena, sat next to her. She looked tired and scared. Pam didn't ask for a photo. She didn't take out a notebook. She just knelt down beside Lena and put a hand on her shoulder. Lena whispered, "She was fine 2 days ago. Now she can't breathe." Pam stayed there, quiet, listening. Lena looked up and asked, "Do you even know what this feels like?" Pam said, "I don't know what it feels like to be you, but I know what it means to feel powerless." A nurse came in and told Lena something quietly. "They said it's chemicals," Lena said, "but they won't write it down. They're afraid." Pam asked, "Why?" The nurse whispered, "We were told not to blame the train crash. Not on paper." That made Pam angry. Not the kind of anger you shout about. The kind you feel deep inside. The kind that stays. She told the nurse, "If anything happens to Emily, call me." She gave the nurse her personal phone number. Then Pam walked out. The air outside was cold and smelled like rain and chemicals. She stood by her car, hands shaking. Not from fear. From deep, burning anger. 3 days later, she was in a meeting back in Washington. People were talking about how much poison was acceptable. None of them had seen a sick child. None of them had held a crying mom. Pam had. That memory stayed with her. And now, in the hearing room, with Elizabeth yelling, it came back again. How dare Elizabeth talk like that, without even visiting the place, without seeing what Pam had seen? Pam clenched her fingers on the table. That hospital visit hadn't been for attention. It hadn't even been in the news. It had been for the truth. And now, she was ready to speak it. Back to the hearing room. Elizabeth shouted, "Well, are you going to answer the question?" Pam raised her head. She moved her microphone closer. Everyone leaned in. She looked at Elizabeth and said, "You asked where I was when people needed me." She paused. "I was holding a dying child's hand in a hospital while her mother begged for someone to tell the truth." The room didn't echo. It exploded. Not with sound, but with silence. The kind of silence that hits hard. Then Pam added, "And where were you, Senator?" People gasped. One reporter whispered, "Jesus Christ." The internet exploded. Hashtags were everywhere. Hashtag Bondi strikes back. Hashtag wine cellar Warren. Hashtag truth from East Palestine. Kids on TikTok made videos. Reddit had pictures side by side. Pam in a hospital. Elizabeth with wine. But in that room, no one was scrolling. They were frozen. Elizabeth's hand trembled as she tried to drink water. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Pam didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She sat back down, calm again. The only sound was her chair creaking. Everyone knew something had changed. Even the TV news anchor whispered, "We may have just seen the most explosive moment in Congress." Pam looked at the folder in front of her. Elizabeth hadn't seen it yet. It had the truth. And the proof. What Pam had said wasn't just words. It was the beginning. And when she opened that folder, the truth was going to come out. Line by line. Dollar by dollar. And no one would be able to hide. That hospital visit hadn't been for attention. It hadn't even been in the news. It had been for the truth. And now, she was ready to speak it. Back to the hearing room. Elizabeth shouted, "Well, are you going to answer the question?" Pam raised her head. She moved her microphone closer. Everyone leaned in. She looked at Elizabeth and said, "You asked where I was when people needed me." She paused. "I was holding a dying child's hand in a hospital while her mother begged for someone to tell the truth." The room didn't echo. It exploded. Not with sound, but with silence. The kind of silence that hits hard. Then Pam added, "And where were you, Senator?" People gasped. One reporter whispered, "Jesus Christ." The internet exploded. Hashtags were everywhere. Hashtag Bondi strikes back. Hashtag wine cellar Warren. Hashtag truth from East Palestine. Kids on TikTok made videos. Reddit had pictures side by side. Pam in a hospital. Elizabeth with wine. But in that room, no one was scrolling. They were frozen. Elizabeth's hand trembled as she tried to drink water. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Pam didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She sat back down, calm again. The only sound was her chair creaking. Everyone knew something had changed. Even the TV news anchor whispered, "We may have just seen the most explosive moment in Congress." Pam looked at the folder in front of her. Elizabeth hadn't seen it yet. It had the truth. And the proof. What Pam had said wasn't just words. It was the beginning. And when she opened that folder, the truth was going to come out. Line by line. Dollar by dollar. And no one would be able to hide. The room was very quiet. Everyone could still feel the silence after Pam said just one short sentence. It was like smoke left behind after a small, careful explosion. Everyone in the big room felt the change. People sat up straighter. They stopped moving. They knew something important had just happened. But Pam wasn't smiling or acting proud. She wasn't enjoying the silence. She was getting ready to break it again. This time, even louder and clearer. She reached out to a thin black folder in front of her. She opened it with care. The paper made a crisp sound in the microphone. Pam didn't act dramatic. She didn't pause. She just kept going calmly, showing the truth. "Mr. Chairman," Pam said in a calm, strong voice, "I'd like to show a new paper on the screen. I think it will help explain the Tim known better." Chairman Haley looked confused. He blinked, like he was still trying to understand what was going on. "Go ahead," he said finally. He waved to a person sitting at the side of the room. The big screen behind the committee lit up. The lights in the room got a little darker. Everyone looked at the screen. It showed a calendar with travel plans. The dates were clear. The information came from the Senate's travel system. It was official. The screen showed this. March 3rd, trip to Boston, Massachusetts, booked by Senate. March 4th, private dinner with people giving money. March 5th, back to Washington, D.C. In the corner of the screen, in big bold letters, was the name Elizabeth A. Warren. The room gasped. Everyone could feel something big was happening. Pam didn't look at Senator Warren. She didn't need to. Pam said, clearly and calmly, "This paper proves that Senator Warren wasn't in East Palestine after the train accident. She was at a private dinner with rich donors." The people in the room became very still. Pam kept talking. The man who hosted the dinner, Lawrence Hollis, gave money to 3 green groups. Those groups got more money after some budget changes. Senator Warren looked upset. Her jaw was tight. Her hands grabbed the desk in front of her. Karen Miller, one of Warren's helpers, dropped her papers. She whispered quickly to a young staff member. He looked nervous and pulled out his phone. After a few moments, a message popped up. She has proof. Another helper leaned over and whispered into Senator Warren's ear. Whatever he said made her face go even more serious. Pam didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply clicked to show the next slide. This time, a party invitation appeared on the screen. It said, "Private dinner and donor thank you. March 4th, 2023. Hosted by Lawrence Hollis. Special guest, Senator Elizabeth Warren." Warren's name was at the bottom, where it showed she said she would come. Pam said, "This invite came from public papers." Senator Warren said yes to this dinner 3 weeks before the train accident. She didn't cancel. She didn't send someone in her place. She didn't call the town's mayor. She didn't send help. Cameras clicked. Reporters typed fast. A TV producer whispered into her microphone, "This goes on page 1. One senator leaned toward another and said, "This isn't just political. This is like a court case." Pam looked down at her papers again and said, "Let me be clear. This isn't about a simple trip. This is about what's more important." When people were crying for help, Senator Warren was somewhere else. The room felt heavy. People in the back who had looked bored were now fully awake. Everyone was watching Pam and the big screen behind her. Warren tried to speak. This isn't fair. There's more to the story," she said. Pam looked at her calmly. "Then tell it," she said. "Go ahead, Senator." But Warren didn't speak again. She had no good answer. There was no way to make that invite look okay. Not when families were having funerals 3 states away. A journalist whispered to another. She just tapped her with papers. Pam wasn't finished. She reached into her folder again and pulled out another paper with black bars hiding some of the words. Pam held it up for the camera. She didn't say anything. The paper spoke for itself. It meant someone had tried to hide the truth. The camera zoomed in. People stared. The redacted parts made it clear. Someone had something to hide. Pam didn't show the hidden parts. Not yet. She let the picture of that page stay on the screen like a glowing warning. Because this wasn't just about where Senator Warren had gone. This was about what had been kept secret. The room stayed quiet. People watched Pam as if she was no longer just a senator, but something more. And Pam hadn't even shown the worst part yet. The screen changed again. This time, it wasn't a calendar or an invitation. It was a spreadsheet. Boxes of numbers and words filled the screen. Pam didn't speak right away. She let the numbers show what had happened. "Let's go beyond the trip," she said calmly. "Let's talk about money." People shifted in their chairs. That word, money, was powerful in that room. The screen zoomed in. A red laser dot pointed at one line. It said, February 23rd, rail safety funds moved to Green Earth Infrastructure Coalition. Pam turned to the room. "This shows that $2,300,000 was taken away from rail safety money," she said. "It was meant to help small towns that needed safer train systems, but it was sent instead to a climate group." Some senators looked shocked. Others started tapping on their tablets, trying to confirm what Pam was showing. Pam kept talking. "I'm not here to argue about climate projects," she said. "I'm just asking why this money that could save lives, was taken away just weeks before a terrible train accident happened in one of those very towns." She clicked to show the next slide. A paper appeared with a signature. It was a request to move the money. The paper had a second name on it. Byron Warren. Pam paused, letting everyone read it. "That's the senator's brother," she said. "He's on the board of the group that got the money." Someone gasped. Pam let the shock sit in the room before saying, "I'm not saying Senator Warren stole the money, but this happened under her watch. The group who got the money is connected to her family." One senator asked, "Do you have proof her brother works with them?" Pam nodded. "Pages 6 to 9 in my papers show that." His name is in meeting notes. He got paid by them. It's all there. Senators typed quickly. Phones lit up. Journalists whispered. Warren's helpers looked scared. Pam could feel it. The room was shaking. Not with sound, but with truth. This wasn't just a news story. This could end someone's political career. Pam spoke again. To be clear, she said, I'm not accusing the senator of stealing. I'm not even saying she broke rules. I'm asking why, when people were dying, their safety money went to a group tied to her family. A staffer behind Warren looked very pale. He whispered to her, but she didn't answer. She just stared at the screen. Her face looked like someone stuck in a trap. The room was cold. Karen Miller rubbed her eyes. Two senators showed each other campaign money reports. Green Earth had given $50,000 to a group helping Warren's plans. The room dropped into silence again. Pam clicked one last time. The screen showed two bars. One was high. One was low. It was a graph. The title read, Eastern Ohio Rail Safety Funding. Before and after. One bar was tall. The other was nearly flat. It showed that some areas had gotten 42% less money after the change. Pam didn't need to say anything else. It was right there in color, in numbers, in truth. Pam quietly closed her folder. Then she said, You asked where I was when Ohio was hurting. I was here, watching where the money went. The room didn't move. But in Ohio, people were watching. In a small church, families gathered in folding chairs. Kids sat on the floor. The TV wasn't perfect. The sound didn't always match the picture. But they didn't care. They were listening to Pam. Her voice came through the speakers. I'm not saying the senator took the money. I'm asking why her brother got paid. Lena Fields sat in the front row. She began to cry. Her daughter had died after the train accident. Nobody from the government had called. Until now. She's talking about Emily, Lena whispered. She's talking about my little girl. In the back, Reverend Lee stood frozen. He had let the people use the church to watch the hearing. Now he couldn't look away. She's telling the truth, he whispered. A woman held her purse close, like a shield. She's the only one who said it out loud. Another nodded. She's speaking for us. One sentence. That's all it took. It didn't fix everything, but it broke the silence. The big news stations hadn't come. Reporters hadn't covered their town. But now, Pam Bondi had. She hadn't come to make them feel better. She came to show the truth. And that made all the difference. Outside, kids held signs. Bondi spoke for us. Truth, not politics. Ask us about the water. A teenager named Luke made a video. My family's from East Palestine. Pam Bondi said what no one else would. Soon it had over 80,000 views. The truth was out. But in Washington, some people were already trying to stop it. They were planning how to spin it, how to fight back. But it was too late. In that church, in that small town, the silence was finally broken. And Pam Bondi? She wasn't done yet. Pam turned back to Dante. Not yet, she said softly. If I speak now, people will say I'm just trying to get back at her. Then what do we do? Dante asked. We wait, Pam said. We wait until she tries to attack me or this group. Then we show the truth, live on air, with proof. Dante nodded. He understood the plan. They had to wait for the right time. Should I send the file to the safe computer, lock it with a password, and make a printed copy too? He asked. Only one, Pam replied. She went back to her desk. She slowly and carefully put everything from the envelope back in order. Every page inside it was powerful. Each line on the paper was like a thread that could pull down everything Senator Warren had tried to hide. Outside the office, the world of politics kept moving. People were talking on news shows, spinning stories, trying to sound smart. But inside this quiet office, only the truth mattered. And the truth was waiting. Calm, strong, ready. Pam placed the folder into her drawer, locked it, and sat down. Her fingers were laced together. She looked calm, as always. But this wasn't just about money or lies. This was about silence. A silence that had been protected by people changing facts and hiding what really happened. That protection was now gone. And soon, Senator Elizabeth Warren would realize it. Because in politics, the most dangerous hurt doesn't always come from enemies. It comes from people who once stood beside you. Pam didn't need to search for more proof. The betrayal had already found her. Now the fight was coming to her. Location: newsroom, MSNBC headquarters, New York City. Suddenly, the news on TV changed. A red headline flashed on the screen. Pam Bondi under ethics review over secret investments. The news anchor, Charlie Dugan, looked surprised. "We're getting word that Vice President Bondi is under review for not telling the truth about her money in a company from Ohio," he said. He kept reading from the screen. "They say she didn't tell the truth about her role in a company that's now closed." There were no pictures, no real proof, just vague words and quick stories. But the news spread fast. Blogs posted it. Twitter exploded. People began talking everywhere. Back in Washington, D.C., inside Pam Bondi's office, Susan Lang, Pam's helper and a smart, calm woman, stood in front of the TV. Her arms were crossed. She looked serious. Pam wasn't there. She was in a meeting down the hall. Suddenly, the door flew open. "We have a problem," said Elliot, one of their team members. He was holding a paper. "This is everywhere. They say she hid money from a business in Ohio." Susan grabbed the paper and read it quickly. Her face didn't change. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "No one we know." "It's just an anonymous tip," Elliot said. That meant no name was attached to the story. Susan picked up a special red phone and called the legal office. "Get me on the Senate ethics team now," she said. It took 17 minutes. Then the phone rang. A voice said on speaker, "There is no investigation. No review. The company closed before she took office. She followed all the rules. Nothing was hidden." Susan didn't smile. She stayed focused. "Send that to every newsroom," she said to Elliot. "Now. Use all our contacts." By the time the news started quietly pulling the story back, it was too late. The damage had already turned against the people who spread the lie. People who had been unsure about Pam now felt tricked. They saw through the fake story. Online, the hashtag Bondi smear became the top trend. TikTok users made videos showing how fast the truth came out. The most popular comment was, "They're scared of her." In Ohio, in a small town called East Palestine, where families were still drinking bottled water, Lena Field stood in her kitchen. She watched the news apologize for the fake story. "They're scared of her," Lena whispered. In Louisville, a man who used to work on trains showed a video. He held up his inhaler. "This is what I breathe through now, after a spill they never warned us about. And now they're lying about the only one fighting for us." Back in her office, Pam returned just as Susan hit send on the last message to the media. "They tried it," Pam said. Susan nodded. But it fell apart. Pam looked at the TV. The screen now showed people talking about media mistakes. "Damage control," she said. It had already begun. "I don't want revenge," Pam said. "I want the truth to be seen." And that was what was happening. She walked over to her desk. The folder from the day before, marked MK, was still locked in her drawer. She tapped it once, then looked away. This wasn't about proving she was clean. It was about showing who was dirty. "Senator Warren hasn't responded yet," Susan said. "She won't," Pam replied. "Not until she has to. And when she does, she'll go too far." Pam knew it was coming. The fake story, the shaky sources, the rush, it all showed fear. But the plan had failed. Because in this country, the truth doesn't always shout. But lies can't stay quiet for long. Pam's phone buzzed. CNN wants an interview. Not a debate. Just to listen. Then another message came in. East Palestine's church is packed. They're watching. Pam looked at her reflection in the window. The smear hadn't hurt her. It made her voice louder. Then Dante walked in, holding something new. A white envelope. No markings. Just her name written carefully in cursive. Pamela. It was her mother's handwriting. She didn't open it right away. She touched the letters, remembering how her mother used to write. The memories came back. Her mother's kitchen, the ticking clock, the sunflower tablecloth. Dante, she said softly, can you give me a few minutes? Dante nodded and left the room. Pam sat down. Slowly, carefully, she opened the envelope. Inside was a simple piece of notebook paper. No fancy writing. Just a message. Pamela, I watched the hearing. I don't understand politics, but I understood what you did. You weren't fighting for yourself. You were fighting for women like me. Women who stood in food lines and were told we weren't good enough. Do you remember that winter when you were 6? I couldn't find work. We waited 4 hours in the cold. A woman behind us called me trailer trash. You held my hand and asked why she was angry. I told you she was scared. I was wrong. She was cruel. You didn't deserve that. Today you made sure America saw us. And I cried. Not because you were strong. I always knew you were. But because you reminded me we were never invisible. You're not fighting for votes, baby. You're fighting for dignity. No one can take that from you. With love. Pam cried. Real tears. Not the kind politicians hide. The kind that comes from deep inside. She held the letter close to her chest. Her shoulders shook. She hadn't cried in over 20 years. Not during her job fights. Not when people left her. But now, the letter broke through the wall she had built. Her mother had made her strong. And now, that strength spoke again through the letter. She folded the paper and placed it in her drawer beside her oath. Some things don't belong in safes. They belong close. A knock at the door. Come in, she said, wiping her tears. Dante stepped in. He saw the tissues but didn't say a word. He just placed a paper on her desk. They're ready. You're up next. She nodded. You don't have to do everything tonight, he said. We can wait. No, she said firmly. We don't wait. Dante paused. Then what are you going to say? She looked down. Then up. Not much. Just what they need to hear. She picked up the folder of proof. Then she took her mother's letter and placed it in her coat pocket. They walked toward the door. Dante tried to open it, but she stopped him. Do you know why this matters? She asked. Because I'm not the story. I'm the mirror. Then she walked into the hallway. People turned. Some stood. Some looked away. But everyone felt something big was coming. Because when a woman walks into a hearing after hearing from her mother, she's bringing more than papers. She's bringing power. Pam reached the double doors. Behind them, voices fell silent as her name was called. Pam didn't stop. She walked to the center. She didn't shuffle papers. She didn't clear her throat. She pulled out a small photo. This is me, she said. The picture showed a little girl sitting on the steps of a school in Tampa. She held a plastic lunch sack. That bag held my only meal of the day, she said. A warm apple juice and a sandwich. No one spoke. I wasn't born into power, she said. I didn't know what policy meant. But I knew what shame felt like. She lowered the photo. I'm not here to win. I'm not here to be famous. I'm here because children today are still sitting on steps like that. Still eating just one meal. Still breathing dirty air. Pam turned to the reporters. You've looked at everything I've done. But did you ever ask what made me fight? She held up the photo again. It wasn't ambition. It wasn't revenge. It was a memory. It was painful. And it was love. She placed the photo down gently. I'm not asking for agreement, she said. I'm asking for the truth. The room was quiet. Pam stepped back. She picked up the photo, folded it, and placed it back in her pocket. She didn't feel victorious. She felt clear. The reporters started typing. One wrote, Bondi isn't making a case. She's holding up a mirror. Another whispered, this changes everything. But Pam didn't listen. She walked away from the podium. Still. The ripples had begun. Because this wasn't about headlines anymore. This was about the truth. And truth doesn't fall. It rises. Even when it walks in quietly, carrying a photo, and speaking for all the kids still waiting to be seen. The lights above made a soft humming noise. They were bright and flickering in the hallway behind the big courtroom. This part of the building wasn't shown on TV. It was where helpers whispered secrets, deals were quietly talked about, and computers worked behind strong glass doors. David Clean, a young tech helper for the committee, stood in front of a screen. He was told to check the backup system for a special computer. That computer was only used by Representative Bondi. It was a safe computer that had very important files, private messages, and laws still being written. But then something strange happened. The screen blinked. A new message popped up. External device detected. System permissions are bypassed. David's eyes narrowed. He didn't panic, but something felt very wrong. His job had taught him how to notice when things weren't right. Quietly, he pressed a secret button. It was called S3, a special silent alert for when someone was trying to break into the system. A minute later, two serious-looking men in dark suits walked in. One was tall and stood like a soldier. He looked around the room quickly. The other went straight to a young man sitting at a computer. "Step away from the computer," the tall man said. The young man didn't move at first. "I said step back now." The man slowly took his hands off the keyboard. His face was pale. He looked scared. A small black USB stick was still plugged into the computer. Just then, Eric Shaw walked in. He was the head of cybersecurity. That means he made sure all the computers stayed safe. He looked at the USB stick. "Pull it out," he said. "Disconnect it from the system." They carefully removed the USB and locked it in a special case. David started running checks to see what the USB had done. Has it taken anything? Deleted anything? The man who had been using the USB didn't speak, but they checked his badge. His name was Michael Tremmel, 29 years old. He used to work for a committee about the environment. That committee had been led by Senator Elizabeth Warren. But Michael had been let go 6 months ago. Eric Shaw looked at him. "Why did you go into Bondi's computer?" he asked. Michael didn't answer. "We'll find out," Eric said. "This isn't just stealing. You tried to change something inside a very protected system. That's a big crime." David looked at his screen. "They were trying to erase something," he said. "Something called the MK file index." Eric's face got very serious. "They weren't spying," he said. "They were trying to make something disappear. A secret meeting." Pam Bondi was just leaving a private meeting when she saw the face of Dante Hale. She knew something had happened. "Walk with me," Dante said. They walked past the news people and into a quiet hallway. 2 Secret Service agents were already there. "What happened?" Pam asked. "In your special server," Dante said, "someone tried to break in. They wanted the file you got 2 days ago." "Did they take it?" "No," Dante said. "They were caught in time. But there's something else." He showed her a report. A red line was highlighted. The man who tried to steal the file used to work for the Oversight Committee co-chaired by Senator Warren. Pam looked up. "That's not a coincidence." "No, ma'am." She took a deep breath. Everything felt heavy. "We lock everything down," she said. "No one moves that file without my permission. And we triple security." Dante nodded. Outside, reporters were still talking about her speech. They didn't know what had just happened behind those doors. They thought it was just about arguing. But now it is much bigger. It was about someone trying to hide the truth. Pam stood quietly, looking at her reflection in the glass. First, they tried to make her look bad. Then, they tried to scare her. Now they were trying to erase proof. But they made one mistake. They didn't think she was strong. They were wrong. A Secret Service agent walked up. "Ma'am, we're moving you to a safe place," she said. Pam nodded. She didn't argue. As they walked, a reporter snapped a photo. The caption would later say, "Bondi escorted after a big Senate speech." But no one outside knew what really happened. The letter from the widow. In a cold, quiet room, Pam Bondi sat on a bench. The lights above buzzed. The doors were strong, and the windows couldn't break. It wasn't a jail, but it wasn't freedom either. She hadn't slept. Her mind kept going back to everything that had happened. What she had said in the Senate, the person caught with the USB, and the look on Senator Warren's face. She was tired, but her eyes were sharp. The door opened. Dante walked in. He held an envelope. "She asked me to give this to you in person," he said. Pam looked confused. "Who?" "Evelyn Reyes," Dante said. "She's 84. Lives in Mason City, Iowa. Her husband worked for Union Northern Rail for 40 years. He died 6 months ago." Pam carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, typed neatly. "Dear Ms. Bondi, my name is Evelyn Reyes. I'm a widow. My husband, Miguel, worked on the rail lines from age 22 until he couldn't anymore. 2 years ago, there was a train accident in Iowa. Miguel went to help. They said the chemicals were safe. They were not. He got sick and passed away in just 9 weeks. No lawsuit. No headlines. Just silence. But today I heard you speak. And I cried. Because you said his name without knowing it. You said the people like him were invisible. That's what Miguel was. Invisible. Until today. Thank you for speaking for him. Yours truly, Evelyn Reyes." Pam didn't cry. Not this time. The tears had already come before, when she read her mother's old letter in her office. But this was different. It felt like a promise. She folded Evelyn's letter like someone folding a flag. Carefully. Lovingly. Then she placed it in the inside pocket of her coat, next to a photo of herself when she was 9. Dante watched her. "She wrote it on a typewriter," he said. "She didn't trust computers. She only trusted memories." Pam looked at him. "Even she trusted me. I'll make sure it's saved safely." "Off the record," Dante said. Pam shook her head. "It's not evidence," she said. Dante looked confused. "Then what is it?" She stood up, fixing her coat like a soldier ready to go back into the fight. "It's a permission slip." A security agent walked in with a new safety update. She paused when she saw Pam's posture. "You're not thinking of going back already?" the agent asked. "I'm not thinking," Pam said. "I'm going." "You're a target now," the agent warned. Pam nodded. "They already showed me who they are. And so did the country." The agent nodded slowly. "You're walking into a storm." Pam picked up her folder. It held the letter, the papers, and the proof. "No," she said. "I'm walking through it." Then she turned to Dante. "Tell the press I'm reclaiming my time. What if they try to stop you again?" Pam gave a small smile. "Then they'll have to answer to Evelyn Reyes." The return. At 7:42 p.m., the elevator rose to the Senate hallway. Pam stood tall between 2 security agents. Evelyn's letter was still close to her heart. Outside, reporters waited. Lights flickered. Cameras flashed. This time, no one would interrupt her. She wasn't returning to argue. She was returning for the people. And this time, she wasn't alone. She had Miguel Reyes. She had Evelyn. She had everyone who had ever been ignored. A voice in the chamber. At 8:04 a.m., Pam walked down the marble hallway. She held Evelyn's envelope in her left hand. Her steps were calm. Her face was steady. Her clothes were the same ones she wore 2 days ago. No fancy makeup. No big team walking with her. She stepped into the Senate chamber. It was quiet. Senator Byron Hale looked up from his desk. "This chamber recognizes Ms. Pamela Bondi for a special request," he said. Pam stepped forward. "Mr. Chairman," she said, "I request 5 minutes to speak. Not to argue. Not to defend. Just to tell the truth." He nodded. "Granted." She opened the letter and read it out loud. Every word. Slowly. Clearly. No one moved. No one spoke. When she finished, she folded it again, like something precious. "This is not a trick," she said. "This is a reminder. What we do here matters to real people." She lifted the letter. "This may cost me votes. It may cost me my job. But I will leave here proud, because I did not stay silent." Some senators looked down. Others took off their glasses. The air felt heavy. "I have been called dramatic," she said. "But I dare anyone to look into a widow's eyes and say her pain doesn't matter." She stepped back. "Let this letter be kept in the record," she said. "Not because it's rare, but because it's not. It speaks for the forgotten." And then she added, "I will not give up. I will not back down. I will not say sorry for standing where others have fallen." Then she walked away. No applause. Just camera clicks. The first change. In a courtroom the next day, people waited quietly. It was supposed to be a simple meeting. But everyone knew it wasn't. Pam sat at the table. Evelyn's letter was under her hand. Across the room sat Senator Ruth Ellison. She had worked with Warren for years. She never made big waves. Until now. "Mr. Chairman, may I speak?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "I have worked here for 27 years, she said. "And I know when something is just politics, and when it's something more." She held up a paper. Evelyn Reyes's letter. "Her words reminded me why we're here," Ellison said. "To serve, not to hide mistakes." The room went still. "So I am asking for a full review. A real investigation into where our rail safety money went." A small gasp came from the press. Ellison, the one everyone thought would stay silent, had taken a stand. Pam didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The change had begun. The big meeting in the big room. The man in charge of the big meeting, called the chairman, was surprised. He didn't expect what just happened. But he tried to stay calm. He hit his desk with a small hammer and said, "We will talk about the idea and have a short debate soon. We will talk about the idea and have a short debate soon." Senator Ellison stood up. She looked serious. "This is a surprise," she said. Right away, news reporters started typing very fast. They posted things online and talked on TV. The story was spreading quickly. A person who had always helped a powerful group changed sides. Some people thought she was a traitor. Others thought she was brave. But one thing was clear. It wasn't about Pam Bondi anymore. Now it was about everyone. In the back of the room, helpers were whispering into phones. Emails were being sent very fast. Senator Warren's office sent a short message in just 15 minutes. It said the idea was too early and maybe not a good one. But the message sounded nervous and unclear. Senator Ellison wasn't finished. She looked around and said, "I know how it feels to go against a friend. But I'd rather lose a friend than lie to the people who voted for me." That one sentence was played on TV over and over again. She didn't say it in a mean way. She didn't shout. But it was like a loud clap of truth in a room full of quiet lies. The meeting ended soon after. As the senators left the room, something had changed. People were no longer just talking with their own teams. They were talking to others, even those from the other side. They weren't asking, "How does this help our team?" Instead, they were asking, "What is the truth?" That afternoon, more senators quietly asked their workers to look at the old papers about money for train repairs. Something big had started. Pam and the letter. Pam stood in the hallway outside the meeting room. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't cheering. She looked calm and thoughtful. This didn't feel like a win to her. It felt like something new. People finally being honest. A news reporter ran up to her. "Miss Bondi, did you know Senator Ellison was going to change her mind?" Pam gave a tiny smile. "No one changes suddenly," she said. "They just woke up." Behind her, the letter from Evelyn was still in her pocket. Evelyn had written it because her husband, Miguel, had died after years of working near dangerous train tracks. No one had listened. Until now. The big vote was coming soon. This time, people weren't going to vote just with their party. They were going to vote with their hearts. The big vote. Sunlight came through the tall windows in the big room where the senators met. It lit up the wooden desks and made long shadows on the floor. But the room didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy. Not with drama, but with truth. 65 senators were there. Most of them knew that today was a big deal. At the front sat Sam Davidson. He had been in the Senate for over 40 years. He hit the desk with his small hammer. "The motion before the chamber," he said, is to start a group that will look into how train money was used. We want to know if it was spent the right way, or if someone did something wrong. The words sounded boring, but everyone knew what it really meant. They were going to investigate Elizabeth Warren. Senator Warren was sitting in her seat. Usually, she looked strong and proud. Today, she looked tired. Some of her helpers were gone. One had even cleaned out his desk that morning. Then came the vote. Senator Albright? Yes. Senator Booker? Yes. One by one they said, yes. Each yes was like a small hammer hitting a wall that had hidden bad things for too long. When they finished counting, Sam Davidson looked at the paper. Then he looked up. With 68 votes in favor, the motion passes. No one cheered. No one clapped. It was very quiet. People moved in their chairs. A few sighed like they had been holding their breath. Pam Bondi didn't jump for joy. She didn't even smile. She looked at Evelyn's letter in her folder. She leaned to her helper. Dante. For Evelyn. For Miguel. For Lena, she whispered. Then she folded the letter and tucked it inside her coat. Elizabeth Warren alone. Elizabeth Warren didn't move. She stared at the floor. She didn't look mad. She didn't look sad. But something inside her had cracked. 2 more helpers left during the vote. They left their work badges on her desk. Pam didn't look at her. That moment was over. This wasn't about being angry anymore. It was bigger than just one person. It was about the rules of the whole government. Could the system clean up its own mess? Some senators quietly nodded at Pam. Some said, thank you. These weren't hugs or speeches. They were just small signs of doing what was right. The news moved fast. Senate votes to investigate rail money. Warren under investigation. Bondi's voice leads to a big review. No one had expected it. Not the TV experts. Not the poll watchers. No one had guessed that Pam Bondi would start something so big. The president didn't say anything. And that silence said a lot. Pam's choice. Back in her office, Pam sat with Dante. The TV showed news about Warren's office. Boxes were in the hallway. They say this might lead to checks in 5 other departments, Dante said. Pam nodded. It should. He looked worried. You know they'll fight back. They'll try to hurt your name. Then let them try, Pam said. She looked out the window. The sun was setting. The Capitol building was glowing. She didn't feel proud. She felt focused. This isn't about hurting anyone, she said. It's about telling the truth loud enough so people can't pretend not to hear it. Do you think Warren's finished? Dante asked. No, Pam said softly. People like her don't fall down. They plan their next move. Warren's brother calls. Late that night, Warren walked into her office. It was very quiet. Too quiet. Her helpers were gone. She sat in her chair. She looked at her desk but didn't touch her tablet or phone. Then the landline rang. That phone almost never rang. She picked it up. Elizabeth Warren, she said. A tired voice came through. Liz, it's Byron. Her brother. She hadn't talked to him in weeks. I got a call from a reporter, he said. They found the paper from the Climate Fund. My name's on it. Warren got angry. That fund was clean. Byron sighed. Doesn't matter what you told me. They're following the money. And I'm in the middle. Warren stood up and started pacing. We were trying to help the earth, she said. Stop, he said. There was silence. This isn't like before, Byron said. You picked the wrong fight. And you're losing. I still have options, Warren said. Victor tells you what you want to hear, Byron said. I'm your brother. You're not just losing your job. You're breaking everything. Your legacy. This family. Warren sat back down. Is that what you want? She asked. Byron paused. I just want you to stop lying to yourself. That hurt more than anything. She didn't cry when she lost in 2020. Not when her husband died. But now, sitting alone, she cried. Quiet tears. Warren speaks to the world. The next morning, she spoke to the press. Everyone was watching. She wore a plain gray outfit. No helpers. No smiling. She stepped up to the microphone. "I'll keep this short," she said. "There are questions about how the train money was used. Some of those questions involve me." She paused. "I be no heave in doing the right thing. So, starting now, I will not take part in any committees about money or oversight until the investigation ends." People looked shocked. She continued. "One voice stood out in all this. A voice I disagreed with. A voice I didn't listen to soon enough." She looked up. Pam Bondi. Pam was watching from her office. "She didn't ask to be in the spotlight," Warren said. "But she stood there when she had to. She reminded us that this isn't just about rules. It's about people. I'm not saying sorry," she added. "That's not mine to give. But I'm saying this. She spoke when others didn't. And that matters." Then she walked out. No questions. No smiles. Just the truth. The final push. Pam turned off the screen. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. Dante came in with a copy of Warren's words. "She didn't say details," he said. "She didn't have to," Pam answered. "That wasn't for me. That was for the others. The ones who are still deciding if the truth is worth the risk." On the Senate floor, some people praised Warren. Others were mad. On TV, people argued. Was Pam a hero or just showing off? Pam didn't listen to any of it. She opened a drawer. Inside was a folder marked MK. It was from a person who had told the truth but stayed hidden. There were still names, papers, and secrets to follow. Warren had been just one part. The real problem was bigger. Pam stood up. "Set a meeting with the Inspector General," she said. Dante hesitated. "You know this will make enemies." "I'm not here to make friends," Pam said. "I'm here to finish what I started." She left the office, facing the nation. Later, Pam was on TV. The interviewer was serious. "Why don't you quit?" he asked. "You've been threatened, hacked, and attacked." Pam didn't answer at first. Then she reached into her pocket. She pulled out two things. One was Evelyn Reyes's letter. The other was a drawing from a little boy named Noah. It showed a train with X's over the smoke. A boy stood next to it. He had no mouth. Underneath it said, "Noah, age 6, East Palestine." Pam put both on the table. "What are these?" the man asked. Pam said quietly, "This is from a widow whose husband died working near the tracks." No one said his name, until now. And at that moment the country understood. This wasn't about one vote. It was about voices that had been silent for too long finally being heard. She turned the letter toward the camera. She wrote, "He mattered. Even if Washington forgot him, you remembered." Then she slid the crayon drawing forward. It was from Noah, who is 6 years old. "His mom told me he hasn't spoken since the train accident. He draws pictures now. That's how he talks." Jacob, the person interviewing, shifted in his seat. He felt a little uncomfortable, but he couldn't look away. Pan, another person in the room, looked up at the camera instead of Jacob. "They can't sit in that chair," she said. "They can't tell their story in that big building. They can't hire helpers or write in newspapers. But I can. And I will. And I won't stop." The studio was very quiet. Stone, the interviewer, had done this kind of work for 30 years, and he looked shaken. "This is not the kind of answer I expected," he said. Pam nodded. Her voice became strong. "I didn't come here to take the easy way. I came because there's a different kind of fight going on, not one with guns, but one with silence. And I've seen what silence does. It makes people disappear." She leaned forward. "Every time someone tells me to stop, I think of Noah. Every time they spread mean things about me online, I remember Evelyn. Every time they threaten to show old secrets, I think of every mother in East Palestine who buried a child while politicians celebrated." She paused. Her words sat in the air. "And if I have to use all my power, lose my friends, give up comfort, I will not stop. Because they never got to stand up for themselves." Star, usually calm, let out a real breath. "You've gotten more than just Noah's drawing and Evelyn's letter. Haven't you?" Pam nodded once. Our office is getting filled. We get about 20 letters a day now. Paintings, plastic water bottles, even scrap paper, all labeled from home. Kids send pictures of their homes, their lungs, their pets that died. People send newspaper clippings with a word highlighted, forgotten. She reached under the desk and pulled out a small, dented lunchbox. This was sent to me with one note. This was my husband's. He carried it for 19 years until the day he collapsed at work. He died before help could get there. I think you might still remember who he was. Jacob's throat constricted. He had a bunch of questions, but they vanished. Do you ever worry this might become about you? He asked quietly. Pam looked up with steady eyes, a small flame in her expression. I pray every day it doesn't. That's why I carry their things with me, to every news show, every government building, every speech. This was never about me. It was about what this country promised its people, and what it forgot. She closed the letter, folded the drawing, and tucked them into her pocket. The screen flashed her name and title, but none of that captured what had just happened. Because what happened wasn't politics. It was real and human. Back in Capitol Hill, her office watched the broadcast in silence. Dante said in a small voice, "This one will change everything." And it did. That night, Twitter lit up with #TheyMatter. News shows talked about her words. And the letters kept coming, hundreds of them, from Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Louisiana, even Montana. Somebody sent a recording of a small-town church choir singing a new version of America the Beautiful. The new word spoke of poisoned air and forgotten voices rising for justice. Another bottle came in the mail. No note, no name. Just the word "Y" written in marker. Pam stared at it for a long time. Then she placed it next to Noah's drawing. She didn't need more proof. She already had the only proof that mattered, the people speaking up. They're not just watching anymore, she said. They're answering back. Then people in schools, churches, libraries, and small towns started joining. In a classroom in Pennsylvania, a teacher named Carla Denton played the last 7 minutes of Pam's interview. Students wiped tears from their eyes. Carla said, "That is what courage looks like when it costs something." In another town, a pastor replayed Pam's words. "They can't sit in that chair, but we can." In Charleston, West Virginia, a retired coal miner named Rick Yates watched the speech on a tablet. His granddaughter set it up for him. He typed a message. "I worked for 37 years underground, buried 5 of my friends, never once heard a politician say our names without pity, but she did. I'm crying and I don't cry easily." His message went viral on social media. By morning, firefighters, teachers, factory workers, and a Navy medic were all posting with #WeRemember. Pam's office was so busy sorting mail that they had to form a team of volunteers. Some towns sent boxes filled with testimonies, photos of dirty rivers, stories of cancer, eviction notices, report cards from kids who missed school because their buses stopped running. But something else happened, too. People didn't wait anymore for someone else to give them permission. In Nebraska, a group of high schoolers started Noah's Voice. They tested water, filed requests for train safety records, and asked their city council to demand answers. In Alabama, 3 retired veterans started a weekly live stream called Forgotten. Every Thursday night, they read 2 letters, one from a child and one from an elder, and talked about what people could do locally. In Cleveland, a Catholic priest, a Baptist pastor, and a synagogue cantor held a meeting called The Voices We Missed. They started by showing Pam's speech. In a tiny library in Montana, a librarian named Rachel put up a board titled Letters to the Living. She asked, "Who speaks for you?" Dozens of people answered. Their letters filled manila envelopes, eventually crowding the board. And Pam watched from afar, amazed. She didn't expect this. She didn't start this. It belonged to people now. It wasn't about politics. It was about steelworkers in Ohio, Navajo grandmothers in New Mexico, shrimpers in the Gulf, Midwestern moms whose kids got sick, and one more woman. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Dante opened Pam's front door. A woman stood there, middle-aged, tired, but calm. She held a plastic grocery bag and an old leather notebook. "I'm sorry I didn't call first," she said softly. "But I needed to see her." Dante blinked. "Who are you?" The woman looked down, then up again. My name is Maya. My son's name was Ben. He died last year. They said it was asthma, but his lungs burned. Nobody could tell me why. Her voice broke. I never got to tell anyone what happened. No one would listen. Then I saw her speech. I thought maybe it isn't too late. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photo. It showed a pale teenage boy smiling barefoot on gravel, wearing a backpack. I brought this, Maya said, because I think she'd want to know who she's fighting for. Dante stepped aside. Pam walked to the door with open arms. Her eyes glistened with the same fire she brought to every speech, every restless night. Come in, she said. And just like that, the story turned again. Because when forgotten people find their voice, even the powerful begin to shake. That sky was still pale when the next knock came. It was Evelyn Reyes. She is 84 years old, and she took a bus from Iowa. She didn't call because she wasn't sure she'd make it. I hope I'm not bothering you, Evelyn said in her soft voice. I came because I needed to see you. Pam opened the door, throat tight. I just needed to see you, Evelyn added quietly. They sat together on a living room couch in silence, not empty or awkward, but full of shared sadness and understanding. Slowly, Evelyn pulled out an old black and white photo. It showed Miguel Reyes, younger, handsome, wearing a dusty work shirt and cap, standing next to a train engine. He never missed a day, she said. Even when his back hurt, even when it took pills to work. Pam didn't speak. She only nodded, her eyes filling with tears. They said his cancer was natural, Evelyn continued. But breathing benzene for 40 years isn't natural. She whispered through tears. Pam reached out and gently held Evelyn's hand. Evelyn looked at Pam with bright eyes. You said his name. You spoke like it mattered. Pam looked back and whispered. It does. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. That's why I came. To remind you, don't stop. Don't you dare stop. You are speaking not just for Miguel, but for everyone like him. Pam didn't answer. She just nodded. That same afternoon, without telling anyone, Pam got into a car and drove to East Palestine. She didn't bring microphones or prepare speeches. She just went. At the church hall, chairs were set up in a circle. There was a tray of water bottles on a plastic table. No cameras. No reporters. Just families. People Pam had never met, yet somehow already felt close to. Lena Fields was there. She held her daughter tight. Their eyes met Pam's, and they nodded as if to say, We saw you. No one clapped. They didn't need to. She came not to perform but to return, to share the truth that began it all. An older pastor invited her to the circle of chairs. She sat down like one of them. Lena leaned in and whispered, They heard what you said. Even the people who don't trust anybody. Pam nodded. It never belonged to me, she whispered back. It always belonged to you. A little boy tugged on her sleeve. It was Noah. His big brown eyes were heavy and serious for his age. He gave her a folded paper. I made this for you, he said. It's us. Pam gently unfolded a drawing. 2 stick figures on a grassy hill. One had blonde hair and a blue dress. Under it, in red crayon, it said, You stood for us. She blinked. That's beautiful, Noah, she said, voice breaking. Is that you next to me? He nodded, proud. I told my mom, you're the first grown-up I ever be. No heaved in. Pam's eyes teared up. I'll never forget that, she said. They didn't talk about politics. They shared coffee in small cups. They prayed, they told stories. Some were bitter. Some were too hard to finish. Pam listened more than she spoke. She didn't need words. She knew that being heard was more powerful than any headline or speech. At the end, people hugged her. Others touched her shoulder in quiet thanks. No stage, no fanfare, just healing. That night, Pam stood outside the church. It was dark and still. She held Noah's drawing. Her hands shook a little. She realized, the fight started here, in this quiet room, in this soil that had been poisoned and ignored. But now they would not wait. She was going back to Washington, not to protect herself, but to rebuild the system that failed them all. The next day, inside the Senate, the room was full but quiet. Senators sat in grand chairs by marble walls. Cameras from every TV channel were there. At the center stood Pam Bondi. She wore a simple dark suit. No flashy buttons. No rehearsed smile. Noah's drawing was tucked in her breast pocket. Her voice was calm but strong. "Mr. President," she said, "I rise today not to accuse anyone. I rise to build." She unfolded a paper. "This is the East Palestine Accountability Act." It hung in the air. "This bill says, anytime we change federal spending, we must show it to the public within 10 business days. No hiding things. No secret pages. No convenient shortcuts. Communities shouldn't be sacrificed for convenience." There was no applause, at first. Just quiet. Then she looked up. For too long, oversight meant hiding. Accountability meant dragging our feet. And justice? It ended up as a press release. East Palestine wasn't a failure of science. It was a failure of courage. A failure of will. She drew breath. "I met a woman who buried her husband. No answers. I sat beside a child who still be Noah heaves and grown-ups, because he thinks one of us finally listened. I carry their names today, not for attention, but because it's our duty. This bill is their voice, not mine." She took a step back and said one more thing. Justice doesn't need yelling. It needs someone willing to stand, even when nobody else will. No one moved at first. Then one senator stood. Then another. And another. Slowly, the entire chamber stood. It wasn't a celebration. It was respect. And maybe a little guilt. Pam didn't smile. She didn't need to. She came not to win votes, but to break the silence. She left the podium amid quiet footsteps. The sound was the whole room rethinking something. Is the power we trust even worthy of that trust? Pam Bondi didn't come to argue. She came to show that staying silent can be the same as letting things happen. That one brave moment, one honest sentence, in the right time and place, can shake the foundations. But this story doesn't end with applause. It ends with a promise. Courage doesn't need power. It just needs one person brave enough to stand when everyone else chooses to sit. If you enjoyed this story, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on the next thrilling adventure or mysterious twist. Thanks so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring.